Good afternoon to our surviving family members, fellow law enforcement, fire, EMS, and military members, family and friends. Welcome to the 11th Annual LGBT Fallen Heroes Memorial Service. At this time, could I ask you to stand for the presentation of colors by the Arlington County Police Department's Honor Guard and the singing of our national anthem by Arlington County Police Corporal Jennifer Levy.
Stand by. Colors. Attend. Right shoulder on. Freeze it. On.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right shoulder on. Right face. Forward march.
Please be seated. I would like to invite Father Jim Hoffman up to the stage for the opening prayer.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. We gather here as family. The portraits displayed outside and in your programs don't just represent fallen heroes, loved, respected, and missed. They also represent the heart or hearts of people in this room, their family and friends, hurting and overwhelmed by the memory of their loss, yet they are here to share the history, lives, and personality of those we honor. Through this sharing of their loved ones, the light of the honored and presenter, let it grow bright and strong. Let us dispel the darkness of grief and negativity from the world from this room, so this place has no darkness. So often as it happens in this event, if they come, let tears flow freely. It makes you and all of us stronger. No, none of you are alone. We are here for you, for your peace, for your comfort, and to share the burden of your grief by sharing our light with you. We ask that peace be brought into all our lives through the memories and stories of the fallen.
Thank you, Father Jim. May 16th, 2003, a day that I will never forget. My best friend, co-worker, and coming out confidant committed suicide. I saw how different her death was treated because she was a lesbian. Her suicide has guided my life in many ways for 20 years. It's also a day that eventually led to the holding of this LGBT Fallen Heroes Memorial Service. My name is Scott Gunn, and I, along with my husband Nicholas, co-founded the LGBT Fallen Heroes Fund. The fund was created to honor our LGBT police, fire, EMS, and military members that are no longer with us and ensure their surviving significant others are treated fairly. Due to my friend Deb's suicide, I was introduced to an amazing organization called the Concerns of Police Survivors, COPS, as many of us know it by. This organization takes care of family and coworkers of those officers killed in the line of duty. Unfortunately, many of you in this room know this organization all too well. I was introduced to them because they sponsor a traumas in law enforcement training throughout the country. It was during one of these trainings, following Deb's death, that I had the emotional break that I needed. This caused me to find the necessary help to start processing my loss. It was also how I discovered National Police Week. After I experienced my first National Police Week, I knew I would have to start encouraging officers to attend. It was and continues to be a very special time. Following that year, members of the LGBT police community started gathering in Washington, D.C. for Police Week. We supported one another, discussed the many issues we were facing. We met LGBT officers that were suicidal because they felt they were the only one. We've met officers that have lost significant others in their life that were police officers, but still in the closet, leaving them to grieve alone. National Police Week became the perfect time to come together, not only to meet as a group, we could honor those officers being remembered each year. Those early years continued to allow LGBT Police Week from around the world to come together to experience National Police Week. In 2008, we held an international LGBT criminal justice conference during National Police Week. We had officers from 5 countries and 36 states join us that year. 2010 changed everything. I met a man named Kelly Glossop. He was at Police Week because his partner of over 13 years, Missouri State Trooper Dennis Engelhardt, had been killed in the line of duty Christmas Day 2009. Listening to Kelly tell his story made many of us realize that those LGBT heroes that we had lost had surviving significant others that were not being treated the same way they would have been if they were straight. They were being ignored, left out, denied the right to grieve. Kelly was not recognized as Dennis's partner, was not allowed to plan the funeral, did not receive any benefits, lost his home, his vehicles, and his will to live. What happened that year affects me every day. Unfortunately, the loss of Dennis was too much for Kelly to handle. His body started shutting down. He became very ill. He stayed sick for several years and never could return to Washington, D.C. to be recognized properly. Kelly passed away November 16th, 2015. We honored both Kelly and Dennis 6 years ago at this memorial service. Even though we were never able to bring Kelly to the memorial service, we did not stop. We started the exhaustive process of finding other LGBT officers that had lost their lives in the line of duty. The first officer we found was Amanda Hallworth. We honored her in 2012. She was a Miami-Dade police officer that lost her life executing a felony warrant in 2011. I saw how much our memorial service meant to her immediate family and all the LGBT police that were in attendance. It was a time where we recognized all those individuals that were not recognized during the formal memorial service. In 2013, we found Master Corporal Sandy Rogers. Sandy was a 28-year veteran from the Aiken Department of Public Safety in South Carolina. She was gunned down responding to a citizen's request to check a suspicious vehicle. Sandy had been with her partner for over 23 years. Francis, who was also a police officer at Sandy's official memorial service, was asked to step aside because she was not considered immediate family. We brought Francis to Washington and recognized her properly. After hearing that story and see how much this memorial service meant to Francis, I knew we would have to continue to hold this memorial service as long as we had instances like this. In 2014, we expanded this memorial service to include not only police officers, but firefighters, EMS, and military members that are no longer with us, because we realized the surviving significant others from these professions are also treated differently than their straight counterparts. We also expanded just line of duty deaths to any LGBT hero that is no longer with us, because it doesn't matter how one lost their life. It's how they lived their life is what we honor. We continue the search for our heroes. In the past 11 years, we have honored 49 heroes, and we continue today where we will honor 11 more. In doing all the research for the memorial service, I have learned that many members of the LGBT police, fire, EMS, and military community have done amazing things. Every hero that we have honored excelled at their professions. All of them have represented the LGBT community remarkably. The heroes that we are honoring this year share that quality as well. This year, we will honor Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Captain Kimberly Schoppa, Colorado State Patrol Corporal Daniel Groves, Richmond, Indiana Canine Officer Seara Burton, Bradley Police Sergeant Marlene Rittmanic, EMT Ethan Amsbaugh, Madison Police Detective Amanda Analla, Portland Police Bureau Retired Commander Michael Garvey, Louisiana National Guard Lieutenant Dr. Simon Freyou, retired Police Chief Kevin Burke, and Army medic and gay icon Gilbert Baker. I never know who I will get to interact with when planning this memorial service. In the past, I usually invite someone to be a keynote speaker. It's usually someone that just because of what they had accomplished shined a bright light on the LGBT community. This year, my experience was a little different than years past. One of the heroes that we were honoring this year worked for one of our local fire departments. I usually try and find the spouse or significant other of the hero, but sometimes I can't find the contact information. So I reached out to a friend of mine that worked for the same agency. He was friends with our hero and suggested that I reach out to one of our hero's commanders and friends. I contacted, at the time, Deputy Chief Tracey Reed. She was not only the point of contact for our hero, but they were recruit school classmates and close friends. I told her about the annual memorial service. I told her that I was trying to get in touch with our hero's wife. Deputy Chief Reed said to me that she underestimated the bigotry LGBT people face when she was helping our hero through hospice and after her death. I immediately knew that I wanted her to speak at this memorial service. It's always great for the LGBT community to have straight allies. They become stronger allies when they see the discrimination we see every day firsthand. I would like to invite to the stage now Assistant Chief Tracey Reed. Assistant Chief Tracey Reed is the head of the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department's Administrative Services Bureau, which includes the Office of the Fire Marshal, Support Services Division, Human Resources Division, and Policy and Grievance Division. Assistant Chief Reed has served with the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department for over 18 years and is the first female in their history to achieve the rank of Deputy Chief and now Assistant Chief. Chief Reed.
Thank you. And I was talking to Kim Schoppa's friends. We were talking about what to say, and I have to admit the privilege of having ignorance as a cisgender person was something that I underestimated, like Scott talked about. So Kim Schoppa and her wife, Kim Claren, and I were all recruit school classmates in Fairfax County in July of 2004. And we became close friends, best friends. I remember there was one time many nights I was too tired to drive home, and they lived close to the academy, and so they would let me stay the night at their house. And so I stayed one particular night, and our classmates, the next day they were like, oh, where did they sleep? You know, are they friends or are they a couple? Like, because they just didn't talk about it. They were Kim and Kim. It didn't matter. They were awesome people. They were awesome firefighters. And so I was like, I don't know. I don't care. Like that stuff doesn't cross my mind. They showed me the guest room. I passed out in the guest bedroom. I woke up in the morning. They made me breakfast, and we went back to class. And I never even thought about it. So because they were both named Kim, we often refer to them as Schoppa and Claren, or together as the Kims. And Schoppa really helped me out a lot. My mom went through a cancer diagnosis and surgery while in recruit school, and I wanted to quit. I was not as strong as Kim was, as Schoppa was. And so I talked to my recruit school classmates and my instructors, and they all supported me and said, you know, you can stop coming to class now, and we'll kind of recycle you, and that way you can be with your mom and start with the next recruit school. And I pretty much decided that was what I was going to do. And when I told Schoppa, everybody else was very supportive, and Schoppa said, no, that's stupid. And I was like, well, that's not very nice of you. And she was like, no, you don't have to quit. You belong here. If you leave, you're not going to come back. You need to stay. You need to take the time with your mom, and then you need to come back and let us help you, and we will get you through this. And that's exactly what I did. And I think I made the right decision. Like Scott said, you know, getting where I am now. I actually took the assistant chief process while Kim was in hospice 9 days before she died. So when she went into hospice in 2002, I moved in with her and Kim Claren to help take care of her. And they had the interview, and I was like, there's no way I can go. I have to stay with you. And even though the cancer had spread to her brain and had affected her mental status, she was clear enough to know to tell me, no, just like she did 18 years before, you are not staying here. Get on some clothes, put on some pants for the first time, get yourself dressed, go put on the face, and go sit in that interview process. And I did that for her, and I never would have been able to do that without her. Kim was a firefighter. She was strong, very physically strong as a person, and particularly as a firefighter. She was very intelligent, and she was an awesome leader. She was one of those people who would hold people accountable and still be very empathetic and respectable. And most times afterwards, people would thank her for having that difficult conversation because she wasn't afraid to hold people accountable, to tell them what was expected, but she was also a human when she did so. And we had a lot of conversations, the three of us, Kim Claren, Kim Schoppa, and I, about life, about race, about gender, about orientation, and particularly being three females in the fire service, what that was like for us and our challenges. Our department was very supportive. I never experienced or witnessed discrimination related to orientation, and I don't think, Kim and I never discussed, either of the Kims and I never discussed it. And so it was a shock to me. Hospice, I say, was fine. It was hospice, you know, the planning, the doctors. I think a lot because of my position, I kind of bullied my way into a lot of places and conversations that maybe other people couldn't get into. But it was really after her death that it really slapped me in the face and woke me up. We were planning the funeral services, and like I said, I'd already been an integral part of the hospice and the medical care, and there had been no issues for a month. We had been going through all of this. And we needed to secure a large venue in our area that was convenient for family and our department. We are about a 1,400 person department, so we needed a large venue. And we had secured a venue, and I was talking to one of her friends, and she said, do they know she's gay? And I was like, I don't think that matters. She's a fallen firefighter who died in the line of duty. Like, why? And she's dead. Like, why does that matter? I think you might want to ask. Why would I was like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. Again, the privilege of ignorance. okay, fine, you're a smart woman too, and I trust you, and I will ask the question, and I'm so glad we did. So trying to tiptoe around it, and they were like, oh, no, that shouldn't be a problem. Let me get back to you. And that's when I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't think this is going to go very well. And so after a couple days of waiting and following up, all of a sudden the venue was not available. And it was a shock to me, and maybe it's not a shock to you. And I was just devastated. And it got to the point of frustration where anytime we went to make plans, I would first phone, hey, okay, my friend, she died, she's gay. Is that a problem? Because don't waste my time. I'm not even going to, is that your problem? I'm not even going to continue with this. And I mean, I think I got to a kind of a dark place in having to do that with every conversation. We weren't talking about Kim, the strong fire captain, the leader, the smart individual, the person who gave her life to the service to her community. All that mattered was whether they cared or not that she was gay. And it was just a very depressing time for me to go through dealing with that. Very fortunate, though, we were able to secure a venue who was like, absolutely, that is not a consideration at all. You know, for who she was and what she did for her community, that's what we're here to honor. Our local law enforcement was amazing. We had a team of people that helped plan the services, probably 20 people, multi-jurisdictional, law enforcement, fire, and EMS. They planned for things that, again, the privilege of ignorance. When we talked about, they would let me into some of their planning meetings, and then they would let me grieve and be on my own. But some of the things they had to talk about was planning for protesters. I'm like, who protests a firefighter's funeral? And again, it was the privilege of ignorance. But luckily, they covered all of that stuff for us, and I'm incredibly grateful. I'm grateful to have my eyes opened. I'm grateful to it was one thing to say that I was an ally to the LGBT community before Kim's death, and I was, but I don't think I really understood some of the challenges. It was only afterwards, like Scott had mentioned, that really some of the things that people go through that I didn't understand. And being more aware, I think, is the first step to trying to help educate other people. I'm incredibly honored for this service. We've been very blessed to have multiple types of remembrance services for Kim. She was honored as a Fairfax County Fire and Rescue captain. She's been honored as a daughter and a sister, her brother's here, and as a friend. But as my friend pointed out, I was going through this education period after her death. This is probably the first and safe place where she can be honored as a wife, not as a spouse, not as a partner, not as a lifelong friend or special friend. I was shocked at when my eyes were opened and we were watching different news channels, and her friend would say, watch this news channel. They're not going to say the word wife. Watch this one. They're going to edit the comments that you already made that referred to Kim as her wife. And again, it was very eye-opening. So thank you for the sacrifices that all of your loved ones have made. I'm glad we're here to celebrate and honor and remember their service and their lives and the way they lived, not just the way they died, and to honor my friend, my best friend, Kim Schoppa, wife of Kim Claren. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Reed. Can I please have Laura Loudon to the stage, please? Laura was a friend of Captain Schoppa and will be sharing her story.
Basically, she talked about the fire. I'm going to talk about the fierce. All right. What can I say? We're among friends, right? We're family, right? A lot of us danced that song a long, long time ago. Kim Schoppa was a gay girl's dream. She was all fine, showing up at the hung jury downtown, riding her motorcycle with her pool cue stuck in the back of her leather jacket. I mean, come on. Who could resist her? Least of all, her wife of 28 years, Kim Claren. In the LGBTQ community, the L comes first. For Captain Schoppa, she was not only a lesbian, but she was a leader. So it makes sense that her L leads. She was the perfect recruitment poster for anything, just walking around being herself with her own special swagger. Want a perfect specimen of a firefighter? Captain Schoppa. D1 athlete? Check. Rugby player? Check. Soccer player? She got game. Hiker and camper? Hundreds of miles on the AT prove this check. Cross-country motorcyclist? Yup. Want to ride to Alaska? You better take Schoppa. Country dancing aficionado? Two-step check right there. Oh, and there wasn't a job in the yard, house, garage, or station house that Schoppa couldn't handle or didn't have the proper power tool for the job. Her motto? Everything is figure-outable. Schoppa didn't set out to meet any stereotypes. She just lived her life being her true self. She wasn't intimidated by anybody, but she didn't go into any conversation all arrogant and brash. She was just herself. Everyone loved to be with her. My wife and I were lucky enough to spend a lot of time with her and her wife, Kim Claren. They were, and still are, known as the Kims. They were so loving and so sweet together. We were always in love with their love. For essentially her entire adult life, Schoppa was hopelessly devoted to Claren. No matter how afraid my wife and I, and it takes a lot to make this big girl afraid, the Kims would walk down any main street, hand in hand, through the smallest of mega country backwaters towns, unafraid to show their love wherever they were, and actually so in the moment with each other that I'm not even sure they noticed that they stood out. And nobody ever reacted with hate towards them. They were proud of each other, and it showed. I remember many gas stations where they would get off their Harley-Davidson firefighter edition bikes and quickly be surrounded by a bunch of country boys, questioning their credentials as professional firefighters. Girls, whose bikes are these really? Well, it would take long. At the end of their exchange, they would be sharing station patches, and finally we're giving the Kims the level of respect and admiration deserved as the heroes they are. She's been gone just a year, and we still can't wrap our brains around how the force of nature is gone. Schoppa lived proud and out loud. She played full out, and she never let the best get in the way of better. She was our best, and she made us better. I'm so grateful for this organization has taken the time to remember and honor our beloved Captain Kimberly Schoppa and the bright rainbow light she brought to the world. She's been honored rightfully by several memorials, but it's different to be recognized by family. And we are family. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. We need to have you speak here more often. Joining us today, in addition to Laura, is Captain Schoppa's wife, Kim, many members of the Arlington County Fire and Rescue, many other family members, which is great to see. Can I please have Eddie Gomez to the stage? Eddie is Corporal Dan Grove's significant other, and he will be sharing his story.
So there's definitely a theme here, a couple themes. Family, number one. Number two, it's how they lived. And with Dan, it's especially true. Dan lived for all of us from day one. Unfortunately, our journey was very short. We were only together 2.5 years, but they were the most intense 2.5 years that either of us had ever felt. We moved in together about 4 months after meeting each other, decided this was it, we were the ones. And Dan never let go. I had had a stroke about 8 years before meeting Dan. And for the first time in 8 years, I felt whole. He didn't see me as half a person like I did, and he made me see that I wasn't half a person. Dan was he was determined to make sure that everybody knew that they were loved. I think a lot of that had to be his upbringing. He was very close to his family. They were very close. We went in herds. So his mom made sure that you were at every birthday party, you were at every anniversary. It didn't matter if it was the youngest niece and nephew to the oldest aunt and uncle. You were expected to be at that party, and Dan made sure everybody was there and everybody had fun and was taken care of. Dan had worked up in the mountains with some of the trooper that is here today, and Dan would host parties up there for the troopers in his group, and he made sure everybody had the right alcohol and the right food. And he didn't care the expense. He made sure that even if you had one drink, he was going to buy that alcohol for you. And this theme kind of carried on with me. He made sure that I had everything that I needed, everything that I wanted, and I made sure that I felt loved. Dan grew up in going to Catholic school, and that went into a Catholic college. And so for the first 40 years of his life, Dan wasn't really sure that he was in a safe space to be able to come out. And it wasn't until he really found his family at the Colorado State Patrol that he was able to be himself and was able to be accepted and to be part of the Blue family. And he was so supported by the Colorado State Patrol. And that bled into me. And I became part of the Blue family once we lost Dan. And they have not let go. They have continued Dan's journey of making sure that I'm loved and that we're all loved and that I'm taken care of. Dan was very determined. So determined that he went through FTO 3 times just to make sure we got it right. Dan was a corporal, and Dan went through many interviews to be a corporal. So determined that he went through 40 plus interviews and finally became a corporal. And he was so happy and so excited and so proud to be able to take care of his troopers. And he wanted to make sure those troopers knew their job and were safe at their job. And should something come up when they went to court, that every one of their reports was grammatically correct. If not, you got that report back. So Dan didn't make the best friends when he became corporal, but he got the best troopers. And Dan made sure they were taken care of and that they were going to succeed because it was his mission to make sure everybody succeeded. Dan was probably the most loyal person that I've ever met. It didn't matter if you had seen Dan as a friend 2 years ago or 20 years ago. He was going to make sure he was by your side and was there for you for whatever you needed. His fraternity brothers were some of his closest friends, and he made sure that each one was taken care of if they needed anything at all. I remember driving home from Chicago after visiting Dan's family, and one of his fraternity brothers was not doing well. And so another one of their brothers called and said, Dan, Rob is on the edge. He's going to jump. Dan stopped the car in the middle of nowhere, Colorado, and made sure that he pulled that guy back off the ledge before we continued to go home. And that's just who Dan was. He just wanted to make sure everybody was loved, felt safe, and was okay. And because of that, Dan brought me here to be able to share with you a little bit of who Dan was, so that we can all know that we're all in a safe, loving family place. So as each one of you go forward and we leave here today, just remember that we're going to live our lives as our partners did, our wives, our friends. And I ask of you today to continue your journey and live like Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. In addition to Eddie, joining him today is Chief Packard, Captain Juchum, several other members of the Colorado State Patrol. Can I please have Amy Miller to the stage? Amy is K-9 Officer Seara Burton's Ma and will be sharing her story.
Just give me a minute. I don't know how you guys kept it together. Okay. All right, my name is Amy Miller. I'm a sergeant with the Richmond, Indiana Police Department. Seara Burton was my stepdaughter, but I didn't see her as my stepdaughter. She was my daughter, and always will be. Seara had a laugh and a smile that could light up any room she came into. Seara loved to work out and was in phenomenal shape. Seara had just been promoted to our K-9 unit and was absolutely in love with her new partner, Brev. They worked hard and made a huge difference in our community for the short time that they were together. Seara had also met the love of her life that we call Baby Mama, who's here today. Baby Mama's actual name is Seara Brooke, and my daughter's name was Seara Brooke. So we had to come up with something to call them, to tell them apart. So we came up with Baby Mama. Baby Mama came up because once they got married, they were going to start a family. As soon as they got married, that was the deal. They were going to start having as many babies as possible, according to me and her mother. So Seara and Baby Mama were 9 days away from their wedding. 9 days away from their wedding when Seara was taken from us. Seara is missed and loved every single day. Seara loved her family and friends so much, and a lot of them are here today. They came here. Seara is the strongest woman I have ever known, and I'll say that to anybody that would ask. And she proved this. She fought 39 days after she was shot. She never wanted to give up. And we, her family, and friends that are here today will never give up to make sure she is never forgotten. I had a little special nickname for Seara, and that was Junior. Junior, we love you so very much. Please watch us all, protect us, and know we miss you and will forever keep your memory alive. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. In addition to Amy, joining us today is Sierra's wife, Seara, and her mom, Jennifer Miller. Can I please have Lynn Stewart to the stage, please? Lynn is Sergeant Rittmanic's wife and will be sharing their story.
Good? Maybe. We'll see. So I did not prepare to speak today, but I can summarize 22 years really quickly. Marlene and I met after I got out of the service, came back to Illinois, and we met at a softball game or practice, something. She had a dog. So she stood out, the dog barked the whole time. So I stared. We went to the VFW after that, because they had the coldest beer in town. And from that point forward, we really never stopped talking. And I don't know if you've seen the pictures of her. Marlene had an infectious smile. She had an infectious personality that was just compassion, empathy, leadership, an excellent person all the way around. In her work life, people really sought her out for training. She was their trainer. She was their leader. So that's saying just because you can doesn't mean you should. She kind of coined that phrase. You might say we were married for 22 years, but officially that didn't happen until June 2011 when it became legal in Illinois. Am I forgetting? I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, but on December 29th in 2021, she was disarmed and executed at a call for barking dogs at a hotel in Bradley, Illinois. And really all the people had to do was take care of their barking dogs. But instead, her and her partner, Tyler Bailey, when they opened the door, when the female in the room finally opened the door, she kind of distracted the two officers, and her boyfriend started shooting and shot Tyler Bailey in the head and shot Marlene in the back, and then chased her down the hallway. And he and the girl with him both fought for Marlene's weapon, and they got her weapon and shot her twice in the neck. And both of them fled the hotel. And they were caught within, I would say, 3 days, which I'm grateful for. But I only say this because there's just so much more. I mean, go into that detail because there's so much more going on with not being recognized as a wife or not, gun violence, hating the police. There's just so much more going on in our world that it's hard for me to wrap my arms around or mind around. I was going somewhere. Oh, yeah. I will say that the Bradley, Illinois, and the Bradley Police Department and Illinois cops wasted absolutely no time in supporting our family, supporting me and declaring me immediately and always as her wife. And I was afforded all of the support you can possibly imagine, and I'm forever grateful to them. I'm grateful to you guys for inviting me here and being a part of this. I appreciate it. I think it's a great cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Can I please have Rich Wortman to the stage? Rich was close friends with EMT Ethan Amsbaugh and will be sharing his story.
Good afternoon. It's interesting how everyone describes everything as being a family. And sometimes you don't recognize how close everybody in this room is a family. I have served in fire EMS for the past 20 years. I work for the Department of Emergency Services now, working in emergency planning. And I'm always the guy, when something goes wrong, I'm the one that has the plans that calls the agencies to come in. I met Ethan in 2010, and it was interesting as being a gay firefighter to meet another gay firefighter. It was kind of exciting. It was like a diamond in the rough in a way, and I was so excited when I met him. And he wanted no interest in me whatsoever. He was solely focused on just helping the community. At that point in time, Ethan wasn't an EMT. He would volunteer where he could with the local volunteer fire departments, and EMS at that matter. And you know, he had this infectious smile. I look at the picture in the memorial in his gear, the center picture, and he could just light up a room. Ethan didn't sweat the little things. In fact, I remember when he went to go take his EMT course and went to go take his test, and being in fire EMS, sometimes becoming an EMT can be very challenging. A lot of us don't like written tests at all. I, for one, suck at it. And I'm just like, can I just get a certificate, you know, and we move on. But Ethan passing the EMT test wasn't because, you know, he was getting credentials. It was because he knew that in Franklin County, where I come from, all of our paramedics are chase units. So the paramedics show up separate from the ambulance. He knew now that he was able to ride in that chase unit to bring it back to the hospital with the red lights on. that's all he wanted to do was to play with the red lights and sirens. It didn't be, for anybody else, it's like, oh, please, let me just pass this EMT test. Nope, for Ethan, it was just, I want to play with the red lights and sirens. He was a true kid at heart for everything. For several years, I was part of PA EMS Task Force 1. We were deployed to hurricane situations, and I can fondly remember one night sitting in a medic bay, getting ready to deploy in New Jersey, and Ethan hitting me up on Messenger being like, hey, if you need anything, I'll be right down. You guys need food before you leave? Is there anything I can do? And Ethan was right there to help out. I remember when Ethan was killed, it was a shockwave. And one of the things that stood out in my head was everyone kept on saying, well, did you know he was gay? And I wanted to be like, did it matter? He was just the first responder trying to help people out. Didn't matter what his sexuality was. And coming from some of the ignorance that we see, I was blown away that it didn't matter how much volunteer time Ethan had done, from starting the junior program in his fire department to being there whenever we needed trucks washed, at any station. If a transfer was needed, Ethan would be the first one to shoot right up because he knew he could drive the ambulance. It never mattered, though, to me, that he was gay. And it blew my mind. And looking throughout this room with so many LGBTQ officers here and first responders, you have to pause sometimes and think, why should it matter? We're all just here to help the greater cause. But then again, we all are a small number compared to other genders in society, it seems like, and it truly does become a family when you look around. I want to thank Scott for reaching out to me. Ethan would be really happy right now. He was never honored as a gay EMT or firefighter. It was just, you couldn't really say that. And it just shows the times of 10 years ago, and even further when I first even came out. Things are changing, and hopefully they're changing for the best. So surround yourselves with the loved ones that you have, and always make sure it doesn't matter what your sexuality is. We're all just here to help. And whether you're a peace officer, firefighter, EMS, or working in military, I thank you all.
Thank you, Rich. Can I please have Liz Analla to the stage? Liz is Detective Amanda Analla's sister and will be sharing their story.
On behalf of my family and everyone who knew and loved my sister, Detective Amanda Analla, I would like to thank the LGBT Fallen Heroes group for honoring Amanda and inviting us to be here today. It's hard to think of a time when Amanda didn't want to become a police officer. Her journey to join the Madison Police Department started when a childhood friend was killed by their close family acquaintance. From that moment, her resolve to protect her community never wavered. Amanda realized her dream of becoming a police officer in 2008 at just 21 years old, making her one of the youngest officers hired by the Madison Police Department. There were some signs growing up that Amanda was meant to wear the badge. The first time Amanda probably had a real interaction with a police officer was when we were learning to drive. It was already a tall order to put 3 kids through driver's ed at once. Our mom took us for our daytime driving, and our dad had us for the required nighttime driving hours. Those were challenging because our dad worked second shift. Once, when our sister Amy was behind the wheel, she accidentally crossed the center line, making a turn onto a street in Milwaukee. Given that the traffic infraction occurred after midnight, it drew the attention of a nearby patrol car. When the red and blue lights filled the interior of our vehicle, three things happened. Amy started crying. I thought I was going to have a mark on my permanent record, and Amanda got excited to talk to the officer. None of these things were helpful for our dad, who was just doing his best to hold it all together. We were let off with a maybe take them earlier in the evening warning. Amanda didn't do anything halfway. She smiled easily, laughed loudly, and loved bringing people together, whether it was through her work at MPD or a spontaneous dance party with whoever was nearest to her. Finding the best in people or the moment are two things she brought to work with her every day. Prior to becoming a detective, Amanda was a member of the community policing team and later a neighborhood officer. These roles are where Amanda was able to thrive and began to leave her mark on the world. She was well respected in the community and developed an outstanding rapport with the neighborhood's residents. Amanda particularly loved getting involved with holiday shopping with kids in need and working closely with parents to ensure everyone had enough to eat. She also worked with a local program that helped formerly incarcerated people get the education they need to work in culinary arts. Police officer and detective are just two of the many roles Amanda played in the lives of people she loved and who loved her. Making the world a better place became even more important to Amanda after she and Erica started a family in 2013 with the arrival of their oldest daughter, Helena, who's now 9, and completing it with Haley, now 6 years old. If there were anything that would rival Amanda's love for being a police officer, it would be being a wife and mother. Officer Amelia Levitt told us about the time at a community toy drive when Amanda spoke to every officer about her family. Everyone could see how much she loved Erica, Helena, and Haley on her face. Because of her schedule, it wasn't always possible for Amanda to be home to tuck her daughters in at night. Amanda's partner, Matt Wenzel, or Uncle Matt to the girls, has remarked many times how they would find a spare moment or two to FaceTime with the girls to say goodnight. Tragic losses have brought all of us here to today's ceremony. I can't imagine that there's a person here that wouldn't trade this moment for one more minute with the people we're honoring. Grief isn't something that follows a schedule or rational pattern. Instead, let's all take the best parts of every hero we've heard about today and spread them across our communities and beyond. Detective Amanda would want everyone to leave this place with a song or two in their hearts and a smile on their faces to share with someone who desperately needs it. Erica, you are the love of Amanda's life. None of us can imagine her without you. Thank you for carrying on her memory and the way you're raising your daughters to be smart and compassionate women I know Amanda would be proud of. Helena and Haley, it's not fair that you have to grow up without your mom. You both will have days when you want nothing more than to talk to her about your day or just get a hug. Your lives are filled with so much promise and potential. She will be by your side for your entire journey. And Haley, you're right. Your mommy was a great popo. Amy, the bond we had with Amanda as triplets is not something we could easily explain to anyone else. However, in the last year, we've grown even closer, and our remaining bond is stronger than ever. I'm grateful to have you with me. And finally, to our mom, Faye and Analla, thank you doesn't seem to be enough. Thank you for giving me the two best people to be my sisters. Thank you for teaching us all the value of working hard and giving everything we do 100%. No parent should have to grieve the loss of a child. You've handled the last year with bravery and love. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about my sister Amanda. Her 1 year of passing is this next Tuesday, and the impact she's had on the people around her. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for extending the invitation.
Thank you, Liz. We are also joined by Amanda's wife, Erica, their two young daughters, Helena and Haley, several members of Amanda's and Erica's family, Amanda's partner, Detective Matt Wenzel, and his wife, Amanda's mom, and other sister as well, and several members of the Madison Police Department. Can I please have Robert Ball to the stage? Mr. Ball was best friends with retired Commander Mike Garvey and will be sharing his story.
Before I begin, I just want to thank a couple of people that are here. A couple honor guard members from the Portland Police Bureau in Oregon. And before I start talking about Mike was the president of Justice, which is I think the largest giver to cops over the number of years. Also the past longtime president of the Portland Police Association, Daryl Turner's here, and a new board member of Justice. So thanks for being here with me. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm here to celebrate and honor the life of a remarkable man, John Michael Garvey, a dedicated police officer, a trailblazer, and a loving brother, partner, and my best friend. As we remember Mike, we must first acknowledge the characteristics that made him stand out: his unwavering commitment to community, his dedication to helping people, both his coworkers and the public, and his courageous spirit. Mike's journey as a police officer began in 1978 when he joined the Portland Police Bureau. Throughout his career, he faced many challenges, but none as significant as being the first openly gay male officer in the Bureau's history. It was a journey filled with struggles and triumphs, but Mike's resilience and dedication to his calling never wavered. Early in his career, Mike demonstrated his bravery and resilience in a harrowing incident. As a young officer, he was chasing a suspect into a home. The suspect hid behind a wall, and as Mike entered, he shot Mike in the face and in the hand. Despite his injuries, Mike returned fire and attempted to chase the suspect until he could no longer feel his legs. After a long recovery, Mike regained his health, and the bullet remained at his neck until the day he died, a constant reminder of his courage and determination to serve and protect. Mike faced discrimination and ridicule at so many different parts of his career. Several times when he went to his car after a shift, he would find his car vandalized with "fag" scratched into it or other hateful slurs. One member of the chief's office said to him one time, "No gay guy will ever be promoted to this office on my watch." Mike faced investigations others would never endure. He got called by a supervisor because on a bureau trip to Los Angeles, he was seen in West Hollywood and questioned about his behavior, which was just being in that part of town. He was called in another time because he was seen in the gay area of Washington Park in Portland, Oregon, where he had been parked and enjoying an afternoon get-together with others. He would come home to messages on his recorder. He had the old school where you push the doorbell and it would go to a recorder. And he'd be at work and he'd come home and he would find messages that would be on his machine that included things like, "You don't belong in the Bureau and you need to leave." In each instance, Mike stood strong and defended himself and his rights. In the most trying incident of his career, when he was taken out of a position as commander, when he thought all of that bigotry and hate was behind him, he was investigated due to a false accusation involving someone he dated. Mike really wouldn't have wanted me to sugarcoat this, but the guy, unfortunately, had a past that Mike didn't know about when he started dating him. So Mike was investigated for possibly being involved with this other person had done. It was on the front page of the Oregonian newspaper, and Mike was taken out of his position. Sadly, Mike contemplated suicide. I only tell you this because of the gravity of how much it affected him. I stayed with Mike for 3 months after that to make sure that I felt it was safe enough for him to be alone when that happened. After nearly a year on paid leave, a grand jury read the investigation. And not only did they clear Mike, they issued a rare statement calling the entire investigation a witch hunt. Even after that, the department tried to demote him for making personal calls on his bureau telephone and because he had put TurboTax on his city computer. Mike stood firm. So he requested the records of his fellow officers to ensure he was being treated equally. And that turned the tables. The request revealed that he was on the lowest end of cell phone usage, exposing a massive scandal. The mayor would have had to fire and demote a wide swath of the Bureau, not only in the Bureau, but the entire city, it turned out, and ultimately led the mayor to having to declare amnesty for all officers and Mike's full reinstatement as a commander. When Mike returned to work, it was the same old Mike. Every new command position he was given, he would go into full force, being the best person he could be at his job, backing up the officers that work for him, and to the shock of so many officers in the Bureau, Mike would often show up as a cover officer on any kind of call at any time of the night. Officers were astonished to see Commander Garvey there helping and asking if he could help in any way that he could. Throughout his career, Mike held a steadfast belief that the best response to bigotry and adversity was to move above it and excel at his job. He would often say to me, "Best thing I can do, Bob, is rise above, move forward, and do the best job that I can." And that's precisely what he did. Mike's legacy as a pioneer, both for the LGBTQ+ community and for the Portland Police Bureau in Oregon, will live on in the countless lives he touched and the barriers he broke. As we honor him today, I hope we can all remember the lessons he taught me and others in Oregon through his actions: to face adversity head on, to be resilient in the face of challenges, and to always strive to do the best job that we can, no matter the circumstances, and finally, to always rise above. Mike's unwavering commitment to his work and his community also brought him recognition from the Oregon State Legislature just 2 weeks ago. In a joint resolution, the State of Oregon Senate and House of Representatives posthumously honored Mike with their highest honor, making his history permanent in Oregon. As we celebrate Mike's life, let us also remember the man behind the badge, a loving brother, partner, and a friend who brought joy and laughter to those around him. Mike passed away in his newly completed dream home in Palm Springs, California last August, surrounded by family and closest loved ones. The night before he passed, he had everyone laughing, we told stories, and he was still the same old amazing Mike. In our last private conversation together, the last time that he was conscious, Mike asked me, "Are you going to be okay?" On his deathbed, Mike was still thinking about others when it was he who was leaving this world. In closing, I hope we honor Mike's memory by continuing to fight for a more just society, tolerant of all views, even ones that we don't agree with, and where all of us can serve with or without fear or discrimination. May we be inspired by his courage and unwavering dedication to his community and the people in his life. And may his legacy live for generations to come. Thank you.
Can I please have Sergeant Ian Glick to the stage, please? Ian is a friend of Dr. Freyou and his husband Dwight, and will be sharing Simon's story.
Good afternoon. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Scott for coordinating this. This is my 16th year, I believe, working with Scott in different events during Police Week. I've had the honor of helping to coordinate some of these events from when they were much smaller and have grown to this size. That's been an honor of mine. As I've been winding down my career, Scott reached out to me and asked me if I would do a celebration of life reading for Dwight, for his husband, Simon. That changed this event to me from being an honor to being a privilege. I've been kind of on the side watching and helping Scott do this sporadically through the years, and to actually be here honoring someone and memorializing someone's life is indeed a privilege. I'm humbled to be here with all the other survivors who are here, and I appreciate your attendance. This is a very brief look at the great life of Second Lieutenant and Dr. Simon Joseph Freyou of Baltimore, Maryland. Those who knew him know that he had 3 passions in life: being a loving husband of 38 years to his partner and husband, Dwight, being a caring and compassionate nursing provider and mentor, and spending time in his spiritual place, which was his beloved garden. Simon had an encyclopedic knowledge when he came to plants. Some would say that he never met a plant that he didn't like. Dwight, on the other hand, not so much. He's a concrete and astroturf kind of guy. Dwight jokes that he has been left with a yard in Baltimore, Maryland, filled with banana plants, palm trees, native Maryland plants, and 22 types of bamboo. Dwight, I'll remind you, those are all part of Simon. There's also his library of hundreds of plant books. But plants are not the only things that were in Simon Freyou's garden. Wherever he went, he planted love and caring. He was known for his kindness, his gentle nature, and support of diversity. He was truly loved by everyone, including family, friends, professional colleagues, and patients. Simon was born September 5th, 1965 in New Orleans, Louisiana. In addition to Dwight, he is survived by his parents, 3 sisters, and 1 brother, all who live in Louisiana. Simon was a lifelong learner. He graduated from Catholic High School in New Iberia, Louisiana, went on to graduate from the University of Southwestern Louisiana School of Nursing, the Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing, the University of Maryland School of Nursing, and Wilkes University Passan School of Nursing, resulting in multiple advanced degrees, and I would probably say a lot of paper cuts too. Over his career, Simon worked at several major medical institutions in the Baltimore area, including the Johns Hopkins Hospital, Greater Baltimore Medical Center, Holy Cross Health, and MedStar Union Memorial Hospital. At the time of his death, at the age of 57, from multiple myeloma, he was in private practice as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, where he worked with his husband Dwight, a former paramedic and now trauma therapist specializing in caring for first responders and military personnel with PTSD. When Simon's clients learned of his death, Dwight and his family were overwhelmed with an outpouring of love from his patients. Here are a few comments from some of them. He was truly wonderful, such a special person, and I feel incredibly lucky to have been his patient. He was a prime example of how having a caring and competent doctor makes a huge difference. Another patient says, I've been working with Simon for roughly 2 years, and he was really a great guy. Always kind and encouraging. You could always tell we weren't just a patient, but he genuinely cared about how we were coming along, and that's rarer than you may realize these days. I attribute him greatly to much of my recovery, even though each time I told him that, he made sure to put the kudos right back to me. Simon was a caring man, a kind man, and a professional too. I will always appreciate the time he took for me and his sincerity for his commitment to helping others find peace and comfort in their lives. Yet another patient relates, Simon was such an amazing spirit and someone who I feel blessed to have met. He certainly played a part in saving my quality of life and the quality of life for my family. And finally, he was definitely a huge part of the sunshine in my life. And that's just what his patients had to say. Simon and Dwight were also world travelers, having adventured to 48 countries, including Kenya, Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Galapagos Islands. In fact, it was on a cruise to Alaska where I first met Simon and Dwight. Simon immediately struck me as being very laid back, a very laid back person that enjoyed life. He was very comfortable around everyone he met, and he always made sure they were comfortable too. His love of nature was evident as he watched the beauty of Alaska go past us from the deck of the ship. You could see it in his eyes that he truly embraced nature and was truly at home when surrounded by it. But beyond being a wonderful person, Simon had a funny and often naughty side to him. Since his death in October, there have been a lot of stories coming out about Simon, such as being in Havana, Cuba, and having a prostitute trying to pick him up at a beer hall. Simon, being the sweet and naive person that he was, thought that she was just a very nice woman who wanted to talk, so he bought her a beer. They parted company independently of each other, just for the record. There are so many little things about Simon which made people laugh. There was a patient when he worked at Johns Hopkins who used to call him Nurse Honeybuns. Another case of his naivete and devotion to his country was when he was in the Army. His National Guard unit was a medical unit, and he was a fairly new second lieutenant with a big assignment when on deployment to the Mojave Desert. He, as a young gay man, long before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and was given the assignment of being in charge of shower duty. Never happened to me when I was in the Army. But Simon, being Simon, gave the assignment to someone else and often stated that that was one of his biggest mistakes while in the Army. Joni, his neighbor and dear friend, shared a story of Simon, who at times could be a bit unfocused. Joni shared of one evening when he was sitting in his chair, was trying to put on his bedroom slippers, only to find out that he was instead trying to stick his big foot into Misty, his cat, who was lying on the floor at his feet. But Simon had an angel and a devil side to him, like one sitting on each shoulder. He was such a kind and loving person, but he was also such a little stinker. He would occasionally tell little white lies if he was up to something that he thought Dwight wouldn't support. Everybody here who's married understands that. He would buy antique Roseville pottery with cash and then hide it around the house so Dwight wouldn't find it. After his death, Dwight found 32 pieces of antique pottery hidden on top of the kitchen cabinets. And his mother shared several stories with Dwight when he was in the hospital about Simon and his brother Patrick. Apparently, they weren't angels either. In fact, Miss Linda, his mother, had a hard time finding and keeping babysitters for them. One story goes that when they were about 5 or so, the babysitter asked them, "Where's your dog?" They said, "Oh, he's in the freezer." Thinking nothing, she just moved on. About 20 minutes later, once again, she asked the same question, "Where's the dog?" and got the same response. Well, sure enough, she opened the door to the freezer, and there sat the poor shivering dog in the cold, dark freezer. Even as Simon's life was nearing its end, he managed to plant one last seed in his garden of life. It was his wish that in lieu of flowers, that donations should be made to the Simon J. Freyou Oncology Foundation Fund at Ascension St. Agnes Hospital. This fund was created in honor of Simon's unwavering support of oncology nurses and his desire to ensure these individuals have the opportunity to become their very best selves. This fund will provide support for various continuing education programs. In closing, Dwight has said that Simon was a shining star in our universe and the world is a bit darker today without him. I think everybody in this room understands that, and it's by sharing these stories that we see that, in fact, it's not darker. It's, in fact, illuminated even more. Thank you.
I've had the pleasure of knowing Dwight and Simon for over 24 years, and everything that Ian just said is true. Simon was amazing. Can I please have Ed Beauvais come to the stage? Ed was good friends with retired Chief Kevin Burke and will be sharing his story.
Good evening. I met Kevin Burke about 25 years ago here in DC. For somebody who lived in Pennsylvania and somebody else who lived in California, we hung out in DC an awful lot through the years. It's a well-known saying, it's not how they died, but how they lived. It's a saying that I now understand. Anyone who met Kevin Burke understands this. Because of his charm, because of his dry wit, because of his life. Kevin Burke, attorney at law, 15 years LAPD, promoted to sergeant LAPD. 15 years chief of police, Lakeport County, Sonoma County, California. Judge, leading his community, inspiring those around him, elevating anyone who knew him. Co-founder, Protect and Defend, an agency to support us, brothers and sisters in blue, red, and green, at a time when there was no one to support us. Kevin Burke, dog dad, friend, mentor. It was over 20 years ago, right here in DC, after a nice meal, Kevin and I, some friends, stood outside talking. Kevin pulled me aside, whispered in my ear, pointing out to the tree line. He goes, "What is that? Those flashes?" I said, "Oh, they're lightning bugs. You know, fireflies?" Kevin looked at me shocked and goes, "They're real?" See, there are no fireflies on the West Coast. Today, this week, we focus on the life of Kevin Burke and our fallen brothers in blue. I encourage you to take this time to make a call. Extend a hand, extend a kind word. Give a bear hug to those who mean something to you. For you have no idea the fight that someone is fighting within. We work in a profession where we see the worst of the worst, worse than anyone else will see. Remember, there's always help. You are never, ever, ever alone. Take this time to remember our fallen. Tell a story about them. Make sure they are not forgotten. Kevin, may you always shine like a firefly, both in heaven and in our memories. I miss you, brother. And I want to remind that there is a Kevin Burke Memorial Fund in Sonoma County, California, to help people who want to be police officers be paid for through the academy so that they can follow in the footsteps of our brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Joining us today are several friends of Kevin and many members of Protect and Defend. Heroes come in many forms. Yes, our last person that we will honor today served his country many years ago as a medic in the United States Army. However, what he did for the LGBTQ community in his life after the military is what we honor and celebrate today. You may not have known his name, but you certainly know his work. Can I please have Charlie Beal to the stage? Mr. Beal is the president of the Gilbert Baker Foundation and will be sharing Gilbert's story.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I'd like to thank Scott. It's incredible what you've done, your organization, in building this up from the ground. I understand what that's like. I'd also like to thank everybody here who has done service in uniform, often in dress uniform. Gilbert did a different kind of service, often in a dress. But he did serve in the Army. Growing up in a very small town in Kansas, he thought that, he was very different. He was, suffered some discrimination growing up, definitely, and thought of the Army as being a way out. It didn't end up being the way out he thought it would be. He went into the Army in the late 60s when the Vietnam War was raging. And he was treated, to say in a word, terribly. He was gay bashed. He felt his life was threatened in a series of incidents that he's written about in his memoir. And he thought that was it. His life was going to be over, and he was going to be a conscientious objector and try to leave the Army to the horror of his very Republican family. But fortunately, a kind officer sat him down and said, "Why don't you become a medic? You won't have to carry a gun." I don't know if that's true or not, but he said yes, and they sent him down to Texas to train. And so at the very end of the 60s and the early 70s, they stationed him in San Francisco, which was quite a wonderful opportunity for him. He finished his service as a medic dealing with people coming back from Vietnam with their various problems and issues. So he was honorably discharged, and he took off that uniform and put on another of a crazy drag queen hippie who loved to sew. He had learned to sew at the knee of his grandmother. And he kept sewing, and he took sewing classes, and he had always wanted to be an artist, and he combined those things, and eventually went to work with the women's movement, and eventually the gay rights movement, worked on the decorations committee for the 1977 gay parade in San Francisco, and the next year became the chairman of that committee. And a politician named Harvey Milk around that time asked him, "You know what, you sew, you're an artist, we need a new symbol for our community." At the time, they were using the pink triangle, which I think a lot of people know was a symbol of oppression that was put on us by the Nazis. They were trying to rebrand it. It wasn't working so well. And so they asked Gilbert Baker, this crazy drag queen hippie who was making banners for protest marches, to come up with a new symbol for our movement that we could rally under. The first decision Gilbert made, that a lot of people don't realize, is that symbol should be a flag. And as I stand here flanked by these other flags, I can't tell you how important that decision was. People rally under flags. They go into battle under flags. They die under flags. Gilbert had seen in the 1976 bicentennial the power of the American flag. And it changed him. He grew to respect that symbol. He grew to respect all flags. And while out dancing one night in San Francisco, soon after making this decision to create a flag for our community, Gilbert looked around and he saw the amazing diversity of the crowd. And he saw a rainbow, the rainbow of humanity. and that was it. He got together a very diverse group of friends, and they dyed fabric and they sewed, and he created 2 massive 30-foot by 60-foot flags. Gilbert didn't do anything small. And they raised those flags for the first time on June 25th, 1978 at the San Francisco Gay Freedom Day Parade. And he likes to say the minute those flags left his arms and the Great Spirit took them up in the wind, he knew what he would spend the rest of his life doing, and he did. And he very soon after that went to work in the flag industry. A lot of people don't know this. They know him in many guises, but he went in to apply for a job at Paramount Flag Company, a good old-fashioned American red, white, and blue conservative flag company. He went in with his little cheerleader outfit and his pom-pom boots, and you would have wondered why this conservative industry hired him, but he so impressed them with his ideas of how they could fix up their retail and their retail store and their display that they hired him on the spot. And he got involved in the flag industry and over the years became an incredibly respected vexillographer. It's a person who designs and creates flags. He was a longtime member of the North American Vexillological Association, very much respected as the creator of this symbol. In 1987, about almost 10 years after he created the flag, with his boss at the flag store, Jim Farragon, he presented a paper to the international gathering in San Francisco of not only the North American Vexillological Association, but the Association Vexillologique, which is the International Association of Flag Creators, and the people study them. And after much pleading and lobbying and years of making incredible displays for Mayor Feinstein and politicians in San Francisco, they added the rainbow flag to the catalog, the official catalog of the North American Vexillological Association, which was very important. Today, if you want to create a flag, you can get Photoshop and put it online. It goes around the world in about 15 seconds, and everybody's got a new flag. But back then, at the time, it was a little more difficult, and for this very conservative industry to adopt this symbol was a massive achievement for somebody like Gilbert. I met Gilbert in 1993. He had come to New York to create a mile-long flag for Stonewall 25 celebration, the 25th anniversary of the riots at Stonewall. And Gilbert had, through a friend, knew my brother. I was at my brother's house, and he's got these big, beautiful sketches of this mile-long flag going up Fifth Avenue. And I was like, I want to get to know this guy. And I immediately, we just immediately became friends. I helped and volunteered on that project with him. We helped had to do a lot of problems fighting with the city to even get this project done. And after that flag was unfurled, it was cut into a number of 100-foot and 200-foot pieces and given to contingencies from around the world, because at the same time that they were doing Stonewall 25 was the Gay Games in New York. And so there were people from all around the world, and he gave those flags to people from London and China and Cuba and Brazil. And the next year, what was a national symbol for the LGBTQ community in the United States became an international symbol. Today, it is considered one of the 8th most recognizable symbols in the world, after the American flag, the French tricolor flag, the British Union Jack, McDonald's arches, the Nike swoosh. You get it. It's that big, meaning when I say recognizable symbol, anybody in the world, when they see that, they know what it is. They know what it means. And it is a very important symbol. Today, that symbol is, ubiquitous everywhere you go. I was very lucky about 8 or 9 years ago, by the way, to meet my husband, Vincent Gazzone, himself a retired policeman, firefighter, and veteran of 9/11. Gilbert immediately embraced Vincent at a gay marriage rally in Times Square. It was our second date. So when Vince met me, he knew he was in for something. Anyway, And Gilbert and I and Vincent had many, many adventures together, including coming to Washington, D.C. in 2016, when Gilbert was able to give the Commander-in-Chief of the United States a rainbow flag. President Obama received him there. And so today I'm really honored that somebody's giving back to him. He gave his life to the universe. He never had two nickels to rub together. He was always giving to our community, to the community at large and our allies. And he was a wonderful guy, and I miss him very much. Anyway, after he passed away, we worked pretty hard just to keep the lights on in his apartment. We decided to have a memorial at the Stonewall Inn out front. My friends there allowed us to have a big rally there with hundreds of people. And at that rally, a friend came up and said, we heard that Gilbert had a book, and sure enough, he had written a memoir. And pretty soon we were getting a memoir published, and pretty soon Nike, with their swoosh, came along, wanted to do the rainbow flag on their shoes. And one thing led to another, and now we have a nonprofit foundation. And we are working to continue his legacy. And it's something we celebrate, this great symbol. You see it around the world as a symbol of liberation, a symbol of hope, something that if somebody is, living in the darkness of the closet and they see that flag and that beacon of hope, and it helps them to take that first brave step out of the closet into the light of day and into the light of freedom and authenticity. And we begin to understand how powerful the gift he gave us is. Today, that symbol is under attack. There are people and communities across this country trying to ban the rainbow flag. They figure they lost on gay marriage, so now they're going after our trans siblings. They're going after LGBTQ plus affirmative curricula in the schools, and they're going after the rainbow flag. We are fighting back. We have worked with the ACLU to create SaveTheRainbowFlag.com. We've worked with communities already. We've already had victories in Sauvin, California. In just this past week in Sussex County, Sparta, New Jersey, where they tried to ban the flag. And working with us and our partners at the ACLU, we stopped that. And even down in Florida, they tried to introduce Bill HB 1011 to ban the rainbow flag on public property, public buildings. And luckily, a wonderful town council person in Wilton Manors, Florida, Chris Caputo, reached out to us, and we fought back. And I'm proud to say that we beat DeSantis. We know they'll be back, but we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep up his mission, and we're going to keep celebrating his life and his service. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And I'm happy to say, thanks to Charlie, he donated one of the rainbow flags from the Gilbert Foundation that we will display here starting next year. I'd like to thank the Arlington Police Department's Honor Guard for joining us today. I also want to thank Corporal Jen Levy for singing our national anthem, and Officer Rose Bariso, retired, for her continued dedication for making sure every fallen hero is honored through her beautiful artwork. And just to let you know, what everybody received today was a flag flown in their hero's honor over the United States Capitol and a photo collage of their hero. That's what they were presented today. And lastly, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We will continue this memorial service until all of our LGBTQ heroes and surviving significant others are treated exactly the same as everyone else. Can I please have Father Jim Hoffman back to the stage?
Something that rang through the entire service, I heard in my head, was the lyrics of a song. One more day, one more time, one more sunset, maybe I'd be satisfied. Then again, I know what it'd do. Leave me wishing still for one more day with you. United in the spirit of love and family, we leave this place to celebrate what we have learned about our LGBT fallen heroes. We exit this room with light and power in our hearts. Don't let that light be dimmed by adversity, anger, and negative feelings outside these doors. Let's take this light shining bright in this room and force it outside this building. Together, our light is powerful and strong, but even a single lighthouse can be seen from a long distance to keep a ship safe. Make us a lighthouse to keep all those who mourn or honor someone this weekend feel safe and protected, so like each of you, they know they are not alone.
Thank you, Jim. If you know any LGBT police, fire, EMS, and military hero that you would like to see honored, please reach out and let us know. It's word of mouth is how we hear and find about most of our heroes that we honor. Our information is in today's program. Also, for everyone here that has received the artwork and flags, please stop at the table before you leave. We have additional items for you. And if you're flying, I will mail those packages for you so you don't have to carry it on the plane. I want to send a special thank you out to the Fairfax County International Association of Firefighters Local 2068 for their generous donation, and also to the Philadelphia Gay Officers Action League for their generous donation. Lastly, I want to thank all of you so much for joining us today. At the height of this memorial service, this was our most attended so far, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.